Mark Fattel here from SB Live. Another episode of Southern Section Sit-Down coming your way, and we've got a big one in. That's right, it's Mr. Thom Simmons, the Assistant Commissioner of the CIF-Southern Section. 26 years in the office, Mr. Simmons. Congratulations to you, that is quite the tenure. I'll start off with this on the 26 years front. Does it feel like it's gone by pretty fast?
Oh yeah, it feels like it's jumped by. You know, every day every year is very cyclical. You get into fall, and then fall turns into winter, and winter turns into spring, and then the summers no longer exist. You probably just get July for the most part, summer-wise, because schools are starting earlier and earlier, they're ending later and later. We had schools that started their first week of football practice in late July. Schools playing in Hawaii the first 2 weeks of August. So, 0 week in football was August 18th. I don't remember in my time it's ever been that early.
Usually, first week of September was for the most part?
When I was in high school, yeah, you didn't start until after Labor Day.
Yeah, that times have certainly changed. And I think when you think about 20 plus years servicing the high school sports community, Thom, again, congratulations to you. What to you, and we'll get to the heavier stuff later, but on a kind of a macro level, what to you has changed the most? Good, bad, ugly? When you wake up, it's like, I've been doing this 26 years, and what do you remember from the 90s compared to here in 2023 that's so different?
Well, it's become more of a business. I mean, there's more of a business aspect. I mean, look where we are right now. We're doing what we're doing, and then if you see NIL and you look at all of that, and these kids they're finding new ways to make what they do not only something they love to do, but they can profit off it. And that was never the case when I started in this office. That, and besides that, we had fax machines. And
what about pagers?
We had pagers. We no cell phones.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, and I was only one of two people that had a computer, desktop in the office.
Talk about the growth of the office. Obviously, more schools in 26 years. Thom, can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, well, when I started, there were 487 schools in the CIF-Southern section. Now there are 565. We had 18 varsity sports. We have 29 now. There's been an influx, and we're very proud of this, a very, very huge influx in female athletics. And we think that that's nothing but positive, providing these young ladies the opportunity to go out there and participate in the sports they love, just like the boys do. And it's been an exciting time. But, it's also been a time of a lot of change in the office.
Sure.
In the last 2 months, we've had 67 years of combined experience and friendship walk out the door, and Rob Wygod, Reiner Wolf, and Anita Fadma. So, that part of it has been tough. We've had a couple of losses, lives-wise from some coworkers. And when you're in an office of 17 people, you're not just friends and coworkers, you're family. And that's the hardest thing when you're looking at 26 years and you're seeing the people that you've lost, the people that you worked with and that are no longer here. And that part of it is always the sad part. But, change for a lot of people is a dirty word. And, so you have to put your head down and fight through it.
I think I've actually heard you say that you have thousands of kids, and and you talk about the Southern section and all the kids that are participating in education-based athletics. What to you is so challenging about your job when it comes to the vast numbers? I believe the largest section in the state. Mm-hmm. I don't know, maybe the largest section in all of the country. And when it comes to schools and numbers, it just sounds like a lot.
If we were our own state association, we'd be the 9th largest in the country, just on our own. The state of California is the largest association across the country, and they have over 1,600 schools. Texas would be closest next, and they're about another 200-300 schools less than what California has. So it's a big job. It's got a lot of responsibility.
When you are thinking about high school sports, we think about community. And you're someone that has kind of overlooked a community of high school sports in Southern California, the Southern section. Have you seen the impact of some of these programs kind of reach beyond what you're talking about and talk about the growth of some of the programs in the section that you seem to think to yourself, man, that's pretty impressive, like a St. John Bosco or Mater Dei, that travel all around the country, and they kind of put Southern California high school football on the map, per se. You must take pride in a section team going and representing like that.
I always say the same thing. I take pride in those schools and those schools that achieve at a high level. Notre Dame basketball, they do a great job. Harvard Westlake baseball, they do a great job, and they succeed at a high level, and they pump out some high-level student athletes. But again, my focus is on the 775,000 that will never, ever wear their uniform again, and that's really where my love and passion goes to. When I'm putting on a championship, I'm thinking about the sixth man on the bench. I'm thinking about all the way down to number 15. I'm not usually thinking about the top 5, simply because they're going to have their day next week. They're going to have their day next year. But for some of these guys, especially in their championships, this is their Super Bowl. It's their World Series. It's their NBA championship. This is their last opportunity to be in the limelight and have this amazing chance to participate. And so we always try to, we try to get the best venues. We were at the Rose Bowl last year. We'll be at the Coliseum this year. Put on the first-class events. Always try to give these student athletes what we consider to be the ultimate moment in the sun for them.
You kind of mentioned, and I think it's a good segue, you're alluding to transfers, the A, the B, the C analogy. It seems the numbers have climbed, at least in the past 10 years and so on. But before we get into the last couple years or even this year right now, I'm actually curious, 26 years ago, what was transfers as... Was there as much limelight? Limelight's not the right word. Was there as much attention on transfers 26 years ago? Whereas kids transferring for different reasons? Just the transfer in general. What's so different between now and 25 years ago?
Well, what's different is if you transferred, that was strange.
That
was not the norm. If you transferred, from a Mater Dei to a Bosco or a Bosco to a Poly or something like that.
Head scratcher.
Yeah, they were like, what is this person doing?
The transfer. What is the largest misconception when it comes to the office? If you could, for the viewer, run through, kind of talk to us like we're 5, I think that's fair. Run through, I'm student athlete A, mom and dad want to move me, I'm putting in my paperwork. Take us from that point to getting on the field or on the court. What's the general basis process?
Yeah, so we have an administrative tool called CIF-Home, and that's how we communicate with our membership. That's how we deal with any kind of paperwork between the schools. It's really been life-changing, and it's provided us with a lot of easy access and opportunity, because before, again, we had 2 fax machines at the receptionist desk. And
so it was all real paperwork.
It was all real paperwork. Okay. And I remember to this day, one day, the receptionist at the time, she looked at those things and said, she's 27 years old, and she said, "Why do you have 2 printers in my office?" And we had to explain to her what a fax machine was. She had no idea. So, but the paperwork comes in. There are alpha cuts for each administrator. So there's A through M. There's so on and so forth for all the administrators, depending on what school that is in their alpha cut.
Got it.
They get the paperwork and they start going through it. Now, there are several different ways you can transfer. Number one is what's called the valid residential change, where mom, dad, the cat, the dog, everybody moves out of public area high school attendance area A into B, and they give up all right, use, and enjoyment to the previous residents. They have to do that with permanent intent, which means they can't have the ability to go back there on weekends. And it's for 12 months, 12 consecutive months. You have to give up, like I said, right, use, and enjoyment of that previous residence. That would be what would be a valid residential change. The next thing is, if you're not moving, you have what's called a sit-out period, which is 50% of whatever sport it is that you're participating in. That date is a date certain. Everybody thinks, oh, it's 30 days, it's 45 days. No, it's a date certain. It's half the season. And the last is one that we've kind of narrowed down over the years, especially when we went to the SOP transfer, and that's a hardship. And a hardship is anything that's unforeseeable, unavoidable, uncorrectable, act or condition that is non-athletic in nature. So if I'm a student athlete and let's say I have cancer, and I have to go to the City of Hope every week. And the school that I was going to was St. Paul, but now Azusa is closer. If you can prove and provide evidence and documentation that that is a hardship, then you would get your hardship approved and you would have immediate varsity eligibility. And I think the most important thing, and I know we'll probably touch on this at some point, is in the 111-year history of this organization, our staff has never made a single bylaw. There's 276 pages of the Blue Book. That is done by the 88 leagues who meet 3 times a year. That is done by the athletic administrators, the principals, the ADs. They come together as leagues and vote on legislation. It's proposed by them, it's debated by them, and it passes or fails by them. We have no vote. Nobody in the office. I don't have a vote, and I'm certainly not getting rich. I'm driving a Ford Escape, 2012 Ford Escape. So, every time I hear someone say, oh, Modern Day just gets this transfer taken care of.
We'll touch on that. I gotcha.
They're taking care of the CIF under the table. If only.
I appreciate the candor and the humor too, Tom. I think there's so many opportunities to kind of set the record straight. So many questions, especially on social media. We talked a little bit before the show, and there's a lot of misinformation out there and what is believed to be true. And I think we all can agree, if you begin to think something over and over again is going on, even if it's wrong, you're going to start to believe that's what's really going on. And I think you coming onto the show and talking about those things is good for everybody. And so when you talk about the valid change of residence, people always think about, okay, well, how are people closing? How are people selling their house and closing escrow on another house so fast? That's one example. Oh, they must be forging the paperwork, so on and so forth. Please touch on that, but also there's a part of it that is up to the schools. There's a school aspect to the policing of these transfers. Can you touch on those things, please?
And this is a prime example, especially when we've been talking about this Nogales thing lately. I know that's very much in everybody's minds. What people don't understand is because they get tied up into the idea that we approved valid residential changes. That's not how it works. The CIF-Southern Section Office does not approve valid residential changes. We receive them from the school. The school has a right and responsibility to do its due diligence and make sure that it's going out there. It's checking house and high school attendance area A to make sure they've vacated, and checking high school attendance area B house to make sure that they are living in there. They got stuff in the closets. They've got beds. They've got their pillows. They've got everything, plates, dishes, whatever. That's the school's responsibility. So especially when you're talking about these kids from Nogales, we never approved any of their valid residential changes. What we did is we received them from Nogales, who said in their testimony on the paperwork they signed that they are validating that these are true and accurate valid residential changes. So what we do, if we come across information after the fact, then what we want to do is we want to minimize the damage as much as possible. And the first thing that we do is we put these kids under review, or we find them academic or ineligible based on whatever the facts state. We do that not because we want to hurt 1 or 2 kids who we find ineligible. We do that because we want to protect the 50 other kids in that locker room.
Because if those kids play, you're going to deal with forfeits. Maybe they have the year of their lives. Oh,
Right.
sorry, you got to take it all back.
Yeah, and that's exactly true. If we can minimize that damage, then we minimize the damage to the psyche and the mental health of 50 other kids in that locker room. And I think that's what gets missed, especially in Twitter. Oh, the CIF, they're just so...
Isn't that your favorite place?
I just don't understand.
Oh,
there are
man.
so many people go on that site
Sure.
and state things as if they know these to be 100% accurate and infallible.
Okay, so the paperwork from the school is submitted. They're supposed to police it themselves. You get it. What is a good example of something that might tip you off, or the section off, that something might be a little fishy about the paperwork or not correct? What is the action of the office then?
Well, one good example of that would be when you find a guardian listed under multiple transfers to different schools. The same name, the same address, something like that. Another, I guess, piece of evidence would be you're looking at where they're coming from and where they're going to. They're moving from a 5-bedroom, $1.5 million house to a 1-bedroom apartment in a town, in a part of the city they probably wouldn't find themselves in. Those are all red flags, and they need to be investigated. And so the problem that people don't really fully understand is We're not the NCAA. We do not have an investigative wing
Right.
in the office. Like I said, there's 17 of us in there, and we've got 565 schools. So we don't have time to send out an army of lawyers and private investigators to go and look at these different valid residential changes. That's why the CIF-Southern section and all the sections in the CIF are self-policing bodies. They have a responsibility when they join the membership to abide by the bylaws, and when they find out information where things are not being abided by, they have a responsibility both for themselves and for the membership to make sure that they're letting us know, what they know and providing evidence, and most importantly, signing their name to whatever it is they provide.
Another example that I think people got up in arms about, per se, the Santa Margarita. Santa Margarita transferred from Orange Lutheran, a quarterback transferred from Orange Lutheran, and in the same week or roughly thereof, 10 days or something, became eligible at Santa Margarita, played in that game, played against Bishop Amat, and there was a notion out there that the section office kind of picks and chooses what paperwork they'd want to file through prior. Explain how you take on the cases, if that's what you want to call them, and how you get to one. Is it first come, first serve? And explain that process a little bit for those that don't know.
Yeah, so when paperwork comes into the office, it's taken as it's provided to us. We don't put anybody up ahead in the line because they're from Orange County. We don't put anybody up ahead in the line for the modern day. We take everything as it comes on an intake basis. They stay at the top of the pile. Unless there's more evidence and more information than we need, then we will move them down until we can get to the next one and see if we can't clear that one faster. It's always about trying to, this is the one thing that is so tough being in this job, especially as time has gone by. We are in the high school eligibility business. We are not in the high school ineligibility business.
Right.
If we can find a kid eligible, and we can find a kid eligible as soon as possible, that's what we want to do. Now, it has to be done via the bylaws. It has to be done via the rules. But if we can, we're going to find kids eligible. That's the most important thing. Now, with regard to the Santa Margarita kid, that's a valid residential move. I don't approve valid residential moves. Santa Margarita did. They said they did their due diligence. They said they went to the houses and they verified that move has taken place. Unless someone has some evidence to prove otherwise, and the mortgage company wanted to do a 10-day escrow.
Yep, those do exist.
They do exist.
No question about that.
So,
the nature of your job, it's so polarizing. I think the office, with so many transfers, so many kids moving. This kid's eligible. He has to be an SOP. Oh, nope, he's ineligible. Why aren't they investigating that? Oh, that one went through super easy. It seems like that's more of your job now than some of the other things that I would think you are probably more passionate about. Is that an unfortunate part of this job that you're in, Tom?
In some ways it can be. Would I much rather be on a football field or a baseball field or a basketball court or on a pool deck? Yes, without question. That's the fun part of that job. But when I took the job back in 1997, this was part of the job too. And you take the bitter with the sweet, and that's kind of how you have to attack this job. Is part of your job is to do things that can be unpopular, they can be misunderstood, they can be hurtful and damaging to kids, and you don't want to do that. That's never your intention. I didn't go into this job to do that. I went into this job because I love sports and I love education-based athletics and I love high school sports, and I want to be a part of that. But there has to be a governing body.
The win-at-all-cost mentality is a good segue to talk about some of those powerhouse programs. And because the transfer market, per se, it's probably a bad way to put it, but because the transfers are so rampant in such a high clip, those kind of the rich get richer, it seems sometimes, Tom. And then you got these programs that feel like they have to kind of play that game too if they don't want to get blown out by 35 every Friday night or by 30 on the scoreboard in basketball. Is there a way to fix that? If you had a magic wand to kind of swirl it, whether it be changing some of the transfer rules or the way schools might operate? Is there a fix for that?
For me, that's not a topic I can touch, and I'll simply say that to you because, again, it's the will of the membership. If the membership wanted to do something about that, sure, there's an easy fix: 1 year no eligibility whenever you transfer. That's one way you could go.
And talk about and for the viewer that might not know, when you talk about membership agreeing to do that, can you explain hypothetically if they wanted to make that rule? Okay, you transfer, you got to sit out a whole year. How would that go about?
Well, you would go to, again, the council, which we talked about. Your league would make a proposal at the council level. I mean, like I said, they meet 3 times a year, and they're comprised of the 88 leagues that make the membership. They vote on all legislation. If they wanted to, you got to remember now, because transfers are a statewide rule, you would have to go not only at the section level, but you'd have to go at the state level too. So the state federated would have to weigh in and vote on this as well. But if it got out of the section level and the majority, and it doesn't have to be 2/3, it just has to be a simple majority. If the majority of those leagues wanted to
change it,
it gets changed, then it goes to the state federated, and then all 10 sections, and then what we call allied organizations would vote on it. So like CAPSO and CSADA, and these different organizations that have votes on that state federated council.
Is it a little bit similar to how girls flag football came about? Kind of just like one section, then it goes to the state level, then kind of everybody votes on it. Okay, it's sanctioned. So kind of the same process, per se?
Exact same governance.
Okay, yeah.
Not any different.
Okay. And so when it comes to making that change, why is it you think more membered schools or membership, the leagues, why don't you think there's more of a push to try and change that?
I don't think that the membership really wants to penalize kids like that. Let's just take, for example, I'm going to school in Seattle, Washington, and my dad gets a job at Boeing.
Right.
And Boeing transfers him to Long Beach. Should he be penalized
No.
because dad got a new job?
Right.
I don't think so. The problem people always then make out is, okay, well, there's got to be a reasonable distance, okay? So what's the reasonable distance? Is it because they're moving from Fresno? Or is it because they're moving from the Valley? That's what people can't come to an agreement on. What is a reasonable distance to consider that a kid who makes a valid residential change should be able to do that and do that without penalty? Because, we're talking 14, 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old kids, and they don't have the choices. Their parents are making those choices for them in many instances. So should they be penalized in certain situations?
Yeah. Playoff system. The football playoff system. The CalPreps rankings, the computer system. People seem to have issue with that. Is there a misconception on that maybe you'd like to address?
Well, it's funny because we just had, this first reading for 24-25 at council where we're talking about going to that system in all sports. And one of the mathematicians that we had that came in and spoke to the council, he had this graph, and the graph was showing in all the different sports where schools using the 2-year model were so wildly misplaced in terms of the division that they could compete in. And football was an exact replica of perfection in terms of the teams that were winning Division I championships, were competing in Division I championships, belonged in Division I championships, all the way down to Division 14. It was just these perfect blocks. That's because they're based on what's happening now, not when you've had a once-in-a-generational team 2 years ago, who that now have taken your number and risen it up. That's the thing that I think people are looking forward to because they see the value in that. They see the value in making sure that we have a competitive balance throughout all of the sports and all of the divisions. And that can't happen if, again, you're using 2 years of data. That's just, it's not realistic and it's not fundamentally feasible. And so we believe that by 24-25, with the help of our friends at Scorebook Live, we will have a data-driven system that will allow us to create that perfect system.
That. A couple other things, and then I think we'll kind of start wrapping up. I wanted to touch on one thing, and that's the athletically motivated transfer. Can you?
Doesn't exist.
Okay, it doesn't exist. That's what I thought. So it used. Give us the history on athletically motivated transfer, please.
When we went through from the different bylaws for valid residential change and hardship, and we instituted SOP, the very first thing that we took out was athletically motivated transfers. The only thing with regard to athletically motivated transfers that still exists is if you follow a coach within 24 months.
Got it.
So I'm at school A, and my new coach gets a job at school B, and I transfer to school B. That's an athletically motivated transfer.
So is that why that verbiage is still in the book?
And the only place that it's there
got
is
it.
that
okay,
one line.
I feel like people have kind of just seen that, and
Yeah.
it's out of context, and they run with it like it still exists. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that was gone a while ago.
I can
and that's
transfer-
hard to prove, right? Is
Yeah.
that there's an element of that too, Tom?
Sure, I can transfer. That was why we got one of the reasons we got rid of the bylaws, is because if you just kept your mouth shut,
Yeah.
you could never be in violation of the bylaw.
You'd have
but as soon as you open your mouth and you said, "Hey, this was a better opportunity for me to play football at school B," and that's why you were done.
Yeah, it's in the LA Times or it's in Daily News.
Right.
Blah blah. A simple little quote. It's like, okay, you're not playing.
Yeah, and
Okay.
it didn't make any sense for us to institute a bylaw that basically you couldn't win.
Right. Can't prove that.
can't prove it.
Okay, so doesn't exist anymore for everybody out there. The public-private. I think certainly privates have more resources than publics. I think a lot of people suggest, hey, let's split up the divisions, go public and private. I believe Texas does that. Has there ever been conversation of that at the office? And again, I feel like you're going to go back to the membership, but maybe your opinion on how maybe there are pros and cons to that system.
Well, this is what I would tell you is the membership is split almost 60-40, public-private. Since I've been doing statistical analysis, and this goes back to the 80s, the number of championships won by public schools is around 60%, and the number of championships won by private schools is around 40%. So in proportion to membership, they're winning as many championships as they should. They're not outside of the bounds of that statistical anomaly. The other part of the equation is for every Mater Dei and every St. John Bosco and every Notre Dame, there are 16 public safety academies. There are 10 Riverside community churches. There are 15 Lee Lasays. There are 12 Flint Ridge Sacred Hearts.
I think the last couple ones we'll touch on, maybe on a lighter note, is just, I've been asking the guests this. Are you still having fun? You still having fun doing this job?
I think that this job is, again, we talked about it in other terms, it's a very cyclical as well. For me, it has been. I lost and my assistant of 26 years who retired, but I gained someone who I think is going to take that position to greater heights than I could have ever imagined. So I'm kind of coming out of a state of mourning, having lost my best friend in the world, Rob Wygod, the former commissioner, probably my second best friend in the world, Reiner Wolf, assistant commissioner, and who was basically my work wife for 26 years. And so that's a lot of loss in a 2-month period. But again, I'm so excited, and she's not on camera, but maybe she will be on camera at some point. We'll get her on camera. But I'm excited about the opportunity to start with this new young lady and build something that I think will be of great benefit to the membership and will provide what I think is something that's very, very lacking with the death of newspapers, and that is more coverage about high school and education-based athletics. That's why I'm excited to have you as part of Scorebook Live. That's why I'm excited to have her in our office. That's why I think that the visual medium is going to take over the print medium, and it's going to be something that's going to be far greater and is going to get more people excited. So am I still having fun? If you asked me a month ago, probably not. But I'm starting to have fun again.
Good.
And hopefully, my team and I will continue to make what we do what it should be, and it should be fun.
I think that's an underrated word. I think people, they think as fun as like, that's so secondary,
Yeah.
and I think there's an element to it that's needed. You got to thread something in there. And, of course, the wonderful addition to your office is Taylor Martinez, who helped put this set together. So thank you, Taylor.
Thank you, Taylor.
But, I wanted to ask you that because I think when you've been around long enough, you've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I think right now, kind of like what you're alluding to, things are there's a lot of misinformation out there, and it makes your job a little bit more difficult. But I think an opportunity like this to set the record straight and be transparent, I think the high school sports community is going to appreciate that. So the last question I'm going to ask you is, if you had that magic wand and you could kind of swirl it around, how would you like to see the health of high school sports? Is there maybe an example you could give me that it's like, that's the high school sports realm I want to see?
Well, just talking about her, Taylor, in the last couple of days has brought me several different articles about story ideas that she really wants to look at. And it's story ideas that I never knew existed. And they're feel-good story ideas. You know, one kid's been playing football. He's got one leg, you know. The thing that gets me jazzed and makes me want to keep coming to work every day are those stories. Those kids. They're what means something to them and gets them jazzed. And so if I had a magical wand that I could wave and change, it would be to get the business aspect out of it, and let's get back to the pure joy of doing something we love. It's just, you know, that's what it is. It's kids being kids. And if we could just have more of that, then that would be pretty cool.
Ladies and gentlemen, Thom Simmons. Thom, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
I hope you had a little fun. You know, I know sometimes the topics can get a little jarring and they can challenge, but I think transparency is really important. I think that's why you came on here. And
Yes.
I think people are going to appreciate your explanation of just some basic rules that they actually seem pretty black and white. There's not a lot of, you can't really get around them. I think the way you put it is just, hey, this is the way it is, and this is the way our office operates. And I know that if something else comes up, you're easy to get in touch with. So thanks again for coming on.
Well, I appreciate you having me, and anytime I can come on and set the record straight,
Hey.
I'm happy to do so.
Yeah, we'll love to have you. That's another edition of Southern Section Sit Down. I'm Tarek Patel. Thanks for watching.